played Silent Hill 2 before. If you look through my channel, you see that I'm a big horror fan. I even already have a Silent Hill video. And if you watch any of my content, there's a good chance I've mentioned Silent Hill 2 at some point. Still, I never played the game, though I watch many videos discussing it. And I don't mean playthroughs, I avoid those. I've always been fascinated by the Silent Hill lore, so I often sought out video essays about it. If you're like me, you know there's a wealth of content to explore. I know a lot about the plot, characters, and even some lesser-known theories, so I'm not entirely blind to Silent Hill 2. When the remake was announced, I considered playing the original first, but then I thought, what if I experienced the remake without knowing the original? Keep in mind, a lot of people will be playing this remake as their introduction to Silent Hill, and I wanted to share my thoughts from that same perspective, without the knowledge or nostalgia of the original. Also, with all the recent remakes of classic games like Resident Evil, Dead Space, and even ones I love like Destroy All Humans and Medieval, they've been beautifully crafted, but there's always something that feels a bit empty in the end. They don't fully satisfy me. Remakes are essentially the same game that, in my case, I've played countless times before. So while playing a faithful remake that feels good at first, I eventually realized that I know exactly what's going to happen. Sure, there might be a few changes here and there, like the Resident Evil 4 remake, but overall there's not many major twists or surprise. The core story is there, which makes a big difference to me. That's why this time, I wanted to experience the remake as a new player, uncovering the plot and the game as it goes, thinking, what's next, instead of, oh, this is the part. Don't get me wrong, I still love remakes. When Resident Evil 4 remake came out, I even cried while playing it because it was so good. But in the end, it's still the same game, just updated. I definitely want more remakes. I hope they do Silent Hill 1 next, which I've played a few times, but I also want a new Resident Evil games. I know Konami is making new Silent Hill games, but sadly, the recent ones haven't been great. We are in this tricky spot between remaking a classic, which has high chance of success, and taking the risk of creating a fresh story within the IP that might not meet expectations. It's hard, but I hope the success remakes will lead to sequels for these classic titles as well. I'm excited for the new Silent Hill games, and I hope other shelf titles get revived with new sequels. Maybe we'll even see a Twisted Metal reboot. They could start with Remake and then build a new entry from there. Who knows? Either way, I just love that I got to experience Silent Hill 2 without the context of the original. Of course, I'll be playing the original soon, but for now, sit back, relax, and grab a snack as we journey through the foggy town of Silent Hill. Since the reveal of this remake, the Silent Hill community has been both excited and skeptical. Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the best horror games ever made, so every snippet Konami shared was met with a lot of harsh criticism, especially because of the team behind the wheel, Bloober Team.
Blair Witch, Layers of Fear 2, Observer, they've done a bunch of stuff, but they've always been like a little clunky. You know, it's not, their games are not ever like the most polished. The animations are never that great, but they landed the license to do Silent Hill 2.
That's on the Silent Hill 2 news today and combat trailer. Combat looked terrible. What was the Silent Hill 2 news today?
Bloober Team is a polished studio known for developing horror games, but their releases have been hit or miss in the eyes of the public. Even their most successful titles like Layers of Fear were considered massive hits. So when people saw that Bloober Team was responsible for such an important IP, they were understandably worried. Not only Bloober was under scrutiny, but Konami as well. Alongside the Silent Hill remake, Konami revealed 4 other Silent Hill projects. As of the recording of this video, we've been already seeing 2 of them, Silent Hill Ascension and Silent Hill The Short Message. Unfortunately, these titles were not well received. And to be honest, they weren't good. The long-awaited Silent Hill revival, which had brought so much hope to a community that felt neglected, while franchises like Resident Evil were thriving, quickly turned sour with 2 disappointing releases. This only increased the pressure on Bloober Team, every new trailer was met with a flood of criticism, complaints about the lighting, Maria's outfit, the game being too bright, and James expressing too much emotions. If you go through the YouTube videos and trailers, you see what I'm talking about. Many people were convinced that this game would fail, and the Bloober Team didn't understand Silent Hill. But surprisingly, Bloober Team was listening. They took in all the feedback, even the criticism that seemed pedantic at first, and they addressed most of it. Over time, as new teasers were revealed, people started to notice that Bloober was making significant changes behind the scenes. Even better, it became clear that Bloober Team actually understands Silent Hill. Silent Hill 2 Remake blew me away in almost every aspect. From the moment you boot up the game, you are met with a really interesting menu. I'm mentioning this because I was genuinely impressed by the range of options available to customize the game. You can turn off hints and even remove the small dot that indicates interactable items, making the game nearly HUD-free. I have to say, playing with everything turned off feels incredibly immersive. Aside from the pause item menu, the game flows seamlessly. Want to check the map? No pause menu. James just put out the map while the game continues in the background. There's just so little friction to pull you out of the experience. And knowing that I had the option to remove even more elements was a really nice touch, something not everyone may fully appreciate. On top of that, there are plenty of accessibility options, which I was very happy to see. Great job on that front. Now, let's talk about the game itself. You play as James Sunderland, an ordinary man who travels to Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his wife, asking to meet her at their special place. The twist? She's been dead, and James must uncover whether the letter is real or something far more disturbing. The first thing I noticed was the atmosphere and the graphics. This is on par with Alan Wake 2 for me. The visuals are incredibly impressive, showcasing the power of Unreal Engine. Even without ray tracing, the reflections are stunning. You can see the light reflecting off water puddles and other surfaces in a beautifully precise way. The textures are incredibly detailed, whether it's the peeling walls, ripped posters, or the foliage and mud. James' footsteps even leave tracks in the mud as he moves. There are so many graphical details that I found myself walking more than running because I just wanted to take all in. And I haven't even mentioned the best part yet, the fog. This is the best fog that I've ever seen in a game. As you walk, the fog blends seamlessly with the environment, obscuring buildings, trees, and cars that slowly emerge from the thick, gray mist, only to be swallowed by it moments later. It almost feels like a living entity enveloping the town and adding to the sense of the unknown horror. You can't see what's inside the fog, but you can hear it, clear as day. You have to step into it, and the tension it creates is amazing as you explore the city, always on edge, waiting for something to appear. It's truly impressive. Gameplay-wise, I was skeptical, as my main concern from the first trailers was the combat. The animations look rough, and the combat seemed to lack impact. So after those amazing first minutes of exploring the eerie, beautiful town, I was crossing my fingers as I approached my first enemy encounter, hoping the combat wouldn't suck. Thankfully, it turned out much better than I expected. Let's start with melee combat. There's no lock-on button. You simply press the attack button and James will automatically target the nearest enemy. This does come with some targeting issues, especially when facing multiple enemies. Sometimes James targets the wrong enemy and you can run into camera problems in tight spaces, but that's to be expected with this type of gameplay. Personally, I had only one moment where the camera actually became an issue, and I never felt that I was hit unfairly or due to any game flaw. The melee combat itself is extremely satisfying. You feel every strike James lands, each hit delivering a solid punch thanks to the great sound feedback. You really feel like you are hurting the enemies. Plus, the ability to keep attacking after an enemy has fallen to the ground adds to the James' desperation as he fights for his life, while also showing how violent he can be. However, because there is basically only one combo, the melee combat does start to feel a little bit repetitive in the later sections of the game. Later on, you get ranged weapons, which allows for some variety. You can switch between ranged and melee combat seamlessly, pressing aim to pull out your weapon, and if you press attack without aiming, James will use his melee weapon. It feels almost like Callisto Protocol, but better. The transition between ranged and melee combat mid-fight is smooth, and aiming feels great. It's not precise. James is constantly shaking a little bit, and in some moments it's difficult to land shots, especially in tight situations. This adds to the feeling that James is inexperienced and scared, which comes through the gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, the combat does become a bit repetitive in the later sections. You'll be fighting the same enemies throughout the game, with some boss fights thrown in. One complaint I had, which seems to be different from the original, is that you are almost forced to engage in combat most of the time. In the original, you could run past many enemies as in typical survival horror games. But here, if you try to do that, you often get caught. It's almost impossible to run past enemies, which takes away some of the survival horror feel. Still, I never felt overpowered, thanks to the AI being fairly challenging. You can dodge attacks with a button press, but enemies mix up their attack patterns. For example, an enemy might throw a punch one moment, then the next time, they will do the same attack but with a different timing or added delay. This keeps you on your toes. I found melee combat kinda risky, so I often went for just one hit before backing off to avoid getting hit. It felt a bit like a lighter version of a Souls-like system, masterable but not easy to go through. But it's very rewarding to win a melee fight without taking damage after dodging most of the enemy's attacks. Is just an amazing feeling. One last thing about the combat is the animations. While some enemy animations are spot on, other feels like they lack polish. For instance, the lying figure sometimes had me laughing with how they crawled across the ground. It worked in some moments, but sometimes it wasn't intentionally funny. Some combat animations, particularly with ranged weapons, were a bit rough as well. At first, it felt weird, but I quickly got used to it. Overall, those flaws didn't take away from the experience, but I wanted to point them out so you can have a comparison. I like to take a moment to dedicate this section to a particular enemy in the game. The mannequins. These little dummies really do their best to hide from you. And they caught me off guard more than a few times. Honestly, they made me jump quite a bit, especially when they suddenly appear around the corner. But it doesn't always work. Sometimes their hiding is the most obvious spots. It's absolutely hilarious. I really love those dummies. Mannequins, my beloved. Sorry, break now for one of the parts that I was most excited about, exploration. I always loved how Silent Hill 1 handled exploration, where you wander the town, gathering ammo, health, and key items that at first seem unrelated but later come together for progression. It felt rewarding to solve those mysterious puzzles, and in Silent Hill 2 Remake, it's no different. Exploration is just as rewarding. You can find standard items like ammo and health, but also a lot of files and key items that can be combined to solve puzzles or unlock new areas. A new addition I really enjoy is the ability to break the glass of cars, stores, and buildings to reveal hidden items. It's very cool to roam around this deserted town, smashing glass and taking new loot. Exploring the game comes with an insane level of care for atmosphere. I play using headphones, and I strongly recommend you to do the same. The dense atmosphere combined with this otherworldly sound effects in your ears, plus James' breathing getting louder in certain sections, it honestly had me wonder if someone was in my house. Like, no joke, the way they build the sound design constantly makes you second guess whether there's something lurking around the corner or if it's just the game messing with you. There are moments where you can hear Pyramid Head stomping in the distance or whispers from who knows who. The game truly makes you hyper-aware of everything, because it feels like something could jump out of your monitor at any moment. It's that immersive. However, I do have two small complaints about exploration. First, there are way too many healing items. Just before the final boss, I had almost 60 healing items, and I was using them frequently after taking hits. I play on normal difficulty, so maybe on hard mode this changes. If you're starting your first playthrough, hard difficulty might be the better choice for a more balanced experience. My second complaint is about the item hitbox. Sometimes I struggle to pick up items because the prompt wouldn't appear right away. I had to move James back and forth until I could finally grab them. This became a little bit frustrating during fights when I need to collect items quickly. As for the puzzles, wow, they are fantastic. I'm talking Signalis level good. While many involve the typical gather a set of items and bring them to this location approach, what makes them stand out is how they incorporate text with the puzzle solving. You often have to read stories or poems to figure out where the puzzle pieces go, One puzzle in the prison had me grinning after solving it. It was so satisfying. Now, how does it feel to finally experience the full Silent Hill story? Without giving away any spoilers, of course, I can say it's a slow start, but a deliberate one. There's a lot of walking and exploring with a few cutscenes scattered through. But the atmosphere is so captivating that I didn't want to stop exploring. The slow pacing fits the story as James gradually makes his way into the town, constantly descending through staircases and holes, mirroring his psychological descent into the town's badness. I already knew many of the metaphors, so experiencing them firsthand made the journey even more impactful. Parmed Head is a standout, serving as both a guide and a punisher for James, symbolizing judgment. The game's heavy psychological themes hit really hard, and knowing the meaning behind certain enemies made some sections genuinely uncomfortable. Silent Hill 2 excels at psychological horror, delivering unexpected twists until the very end. It's confusing in a good way and paced really well. Though I did feel the game's extended length, it's longer than the original. After the prison section, the repetitive combat and lack of enemy varieties started to wear on me, but the story kept me hooked. I was glued to the screen, wanting to understand James and his journey. James himself is an incredibly well-developed character with fantastic voice acting. His confusion when talking to strange, awkward individuals he met feels genuine, and his character progression builds up perfectly to the climax near the final boss. I found myself really connected with James by the end. I really enjoy his character. The supporting characters are great too. Maria's role and how she messes with James is brilliantly done, and Angela is another standout. But I won't say too much about the story here. I will save those details for another video. In summary, Silent Hill 2 offers a deeply immersive and satisfying experience, with rewarding exploration and fantastic puzzles. While the combat and enemy variety could use a bit more polish, the atmosphere, storytelling, and character depth more than make up for it. I can't wait to dive deeper into this story in a future video. Before I wrap up this video, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. I played the PC version and I did experience some stutters and frame drops in several sections. While it's not unplayable, there were noticeable frame issues. I'm running the game on an RTX 3060 with a Ryzen 5 5600X, and I encountered a lot of frame drops, especially during the start of the game and the prison section, where the frame rate would dip from 60 to 50, 44 FPS down to even 32 at times. Again, it's still very playable, but if frame drops bother you, it might be worth waiting for some patch updates. Another thing to note is that the game drops to 30 FPS during cutscenes. Fortunately, the community has already developed patches to address this and other issues, so keep that in mind if these performance hiccups affect your experience. Personally, I was fine with it. There were no FPS drops during combat sections, so my gameplay wasn't negatively impacted overall. I'm incredibly grateful that I got to experience the remake without having played the original. It felt like a completely fresh experience from beginning to end. Learning more about the characters and the lore of a franchise that has inspired me so much as an artist made this game feel truly special. I'm now going through my second playthrough and aiming to unlock all 8 endings and maybe even collect all the achievements. Silent Hill 2 is more than just a really good game. It's a statement from Bloober Team. They worked so hard and faced a barrage of criticism, yet they made sure to listen to the right feedback and show immense passion and respect for the IP. They deserve a lot of praise, especially considering the difficult development process and the skepticism that surrounded the game. Bloober Team truly surpassed themselves with this remake. It's a love letter to horror and to one of the most iconic titles in gaming history. Now it's time for me to return to my special place and continue my journey through Silent Hill. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the remake so we can start discussion, always with respect. If you enjoyed the video and would like to support me, I'd really appreciate a like and maybe consider subscribing to help me reach my goal of turning YouTube into my full-time job. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch my video. Stay awesome, stay safe, and don't forget.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you.